Alrighty, so welcome everyone. This is Pathways to Career in STEM. My name is Jasmin White. I'm a biotechnology major at Florida Gulf Coast University. Right now, I'm pursuing undergraduate research in biomedicine and plants. So if you aren't familiar with Dimension Sciences or DS Campus, Dimension Sciences is a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to assist early career scientists from underrepresented communities through mentoring programs and scholarships, and we help promote diversity within the sciences to further equity, international collaboration, and innovative research. So DS Campus is a Dimension Sciences program, and we're focused on students at the undergraduate level, especially students that are pursuing studies in STEM. So our aim is to educate students about our mission and programs and also help them engage in volunteering for our organization and assist them in the pursuit of their careers. So tonight, it's our first DS campus event of 2022. In celebration of Black History Month, we're presenting two Black professionals in STEM to talk about their career paths. And throughout tonight's program, if you have any questions that you want to ask the panelists, you can post them in the Q&A chat. So first off, to get started, I'd like to introduce Breanna Speed of Global VP Data and Tech at Spark Foundry. She is a Publicist Group agency. Welcome, Breanna. And I'd also like to introduce Jay Porterfield, performance scientist and biomedical analyst with the LA Clippers. Welcome, Jay. So let us start with a quick introduction from the both of you. Let's talk about what you do and how you got to where you are currently. So we'll start with Jay.
Definitely. Well, thank you for having me, Jasmin, and thanks everybody for joining. My journey began in athletics as a young child. I always was drawn to playing sport, but I also always had a passion for building things, creating gadgets, building Legos, things of that nature. And so I always knew that I wanted to do something related to like some type of architecture and or engineering. And as I got older, I saw the use of technology in sport and kind of, fell in love with the idea of mixing my love for building things with athletics. And so my initial dream in the space that I went into, which was biomedical engineering, was to develop prosthetics for injured athletes or athletes missing limbs. And through a series of different events, that kind of transitioned into me getting involved with wearable technology. I am originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and moved to Los Angeles in 2009 to attend college. I went to USC, where I continued to run track and studied in biomedical engineering. It was at that time that I kind of became drawn to the idea of utilizing technology in sport to better inform athletes about what was occurring with their body and what type of external loads were being placed on their body as they trained and competed. That's kind of what pushed me into this space. After I graduated, I worked at a hospital for a few years, and through some of the work that we were doing with athletes, got noticed by some people in the NBA, and the rest is history.
Wow. Breanna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, and thanks everyone, and thanks for having me on the panel. My career basically started when I finished up in the military and I was looking for something productive. Always been a problem solver. So one of the things that has been fluent in my life is when you come to me with a problem or you say something's wrong, don't tell me unless you want it fixed, because I'm a fixer. That's what I'm going to do. And so I started I went to DeVry and attended for my computer science degree. And then after that, I went to a community college here in Illinois, where I got an MBA in leadership and management. And then I decided that wasn't enough. So I started working on my PhD, and I completed my courses for a PhD in leadership and organizational development. And so my career actually started after the military. I started in IT. doing development, application development, moved from there and moved into database management. So proficient in Oracle, SQL Server, Progress, and DB2. So kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And I was very instrumental in helping my organization build out a large SQL Server environment. And one of the things that I got started in is I was always started doing things that nobody else wanted to do. And I mastered that. And then I became the one that was requested for because I knew something that a lot of other people didn't do. So it's kind of a nice space to be in. And then everywhere I went, that kind of followed me along. So after moving into the company that I'm currently with, which is under Publicis Group, Spark Foundry, started there about 8 years ago and started with a IT role, but then since then moved into leading analytics, and now as a global VP of data and tech, responsible for infrastructure, data governance, and data processes around the globe for our organization.
Wow, really impressive background. So, all right, well, now we're gonna move into the question portions. I'm gonna ask you guys some questions. I guess we'll keep the pattern going. Jay will answer first and then Breanna. So first question, wait, before I start, just as a reminder, if you have any questions, anyone in the audience that you'd like to ask the panelists for the Q&A portion, you could send them in the Q&A chat. So let's start with the first question. Everyone has a different path in life, and sometimes we reach a turning point where we decide which route we want to take. So what was that turning point in your life, and was your family supportive of those decisions? We'll start with Jay.
Yeah, I guess I kind of had a turning point in when I was graduating graduate school. I had kind of the option to move back to Atlanta or stay in Los Angeles. And for quite some time, I didn't know exactly which one of those decisions which route I was going to take in terms of where I was going to be and what exactly I wanted to do. Didn't really want to stay in a hospital setting. And so I just had to get very creative with the way that I was, maneuvering my skill sets and kind of like Breanna just discussed, like I like to pride myself on being a problem solver. So it's just kind of like eyeing what types of roles are involved in sport on a day-to-day basis and seeing like how you can apply your skill to them to help them solve problems, thinking outside of the box, considering different things. So I'd say that turning point for me definitely came when I graduated graduate school and just kind of had to decide like where I wanted to put my stake in the ground and in what field, right? Like, did I want to stay in a more medicine heavy background or go more sports heavy? Because I knew I was capable of doing both. I think, my family has always and was supportive of the decision that I ultimately made. I sometimes think that they wish that I would go back and get a PhD at some point in life, but I reached a point where I was like, I'm ready to apply. Like as you get older, you'll realize in your schooling that you learn so much and you get to this point where you're kind of like, I need to apply that. I want to apply that to something. I want to see it in action. And just knowing that it was just time to kind of step away from the books. I don't say that like to say that I don't, explore and try to learn more at this point in my career, but it was just kind of time for me to step away from the books and get more into the application of things.
Yeah, I definitely understand that part. Breanna?
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback 1 second off of Jay, he's absolutely right. I think understanding your season is very important. As I've completed all my academic work for my PhD, started writing my dissertation, but I lost interest. And as I was losing interest, because so many other things were on my mind to actually apply, because once I get it, being in a position to actually utilize it is something different. So my mentors, yeah, they're like, Bree, you need to get this done. I understand, but I want you to be okay with me being happy with my timing, because this is more important to me to be able to do those things that I need to do. So for me, I actually came into IT. I will not, I'm gonna be brutally honest. The reason I went into IT, it was right at 1999. I went into IT because I wanted to make money. I ain't gonna hide it. And I knew that there was a great opportunity there. I did not know just how challenging it was. And then I had one of my managers, he gave me, I think, the most sound advice. I actually had two really one was my professor, Dr. Kim. Andrew Kim, I'll never forget him. Had that suck. And one thing he said, I left the computer science and went to another program that was a lot less stringent and a lot easier to get through the program. And he asked me, he said, what's the matter? You don't like using your mind? And I'm like, what do you mean don't like using my mind? And so after he explained it to me, I'm like, I got it. And so I went right back over into the program, and I just began to dig in and find the things that I would really wanted to do. And so going through school, you learn a lot about the computer, you learn a lot about application development. But then, when we got to database, that's where I excelled, because people would ask me questions about C++. I'm like, okay, we do this and Visual Basic, COBOL, and then it's like, but when they asked me about database information, I would sit down and say, okay, let's figure this out. And we would go in, and then that's when, again, I started seeing that, that's where I kind of migrated to. And so that's why I followed the database path within my career. It was quite extensive, a lot of work, a lot of challenges, a lot of long hours, being on call. A lot of times you're doing 24/7 support, and there's a lot to do to keep that up. But I think for the most part, I always helping people and finding solutions was something that always gave me a thrill. And the reason I really got into it was I bought my first computer, and I was doing something, and I went into the BIOS and I deleted something I wasn't supposed to delete. Well, I pulled out the books, I started going through the books, and this was probably about 8 o'clock in the evening. At 3:46 a.m., I had put this code in that they said to put in. I hit enter, and it worked. I went through the house running and screaming. Everybody thought I had lost my mind, thought somebody had broken the house. And so I knew I had a passion for this. And so that's kind of where I followed along and really built my career to go into the technology base. And it's been really very rewarding, very enjoying, and had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, those are some really, really interesting stories. I mean, definitely a lot of students can relate to wanting to apply that new knowledge, or even being in a major that they liked, and then there's that challenge of applying that mind and just figuring things out. It can be really hard as a student. So just hearing how you guys have gone through all those different stages is actually really inspiring. We could definitely relate to that. So, I mean, that's no words. So let me ask the next question. Did you guys have a role model or a mentor that helped you through this journey? Anyone that guided you? I know, Breanna, you mentioned Andrew Kim. I mean, was there anybody else like that? And we'll start with Jay.
Definitely. And I'm going to be brutally honest, is that if it weren't for my mentors, I would not be where I am today. There's a lot of things that come in the way, a lot of challenges that you face. Like, remember I said I wanted to make money, that's why I came into IT. Well, my first manager in technology, he told me, he said, Bree, I'm going to tell you something. He says, never seek the money, seek the technology, and the money will follow. And because at that time, around the turn of the century, there was a lot of people that were getting $30,000 and $40,000 raises just to sign on. but when they got over there, it wasn't what they thought it would be. And so that was one. Blaine he was awesome, and he always gave me great advice and really helped me along the journey to make sure that, I was, making good decisions and really not giving up, because in technology, it can really beat you down, and it can really wear you down. And so you really need someone that's going to be there to help you work through those challenges and work through those nuances to help ensure that you maintain your trajectory on your career, because it's very important, right? And so when you think about your career, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? I knew that I really enjoyed my job. I knew that I was pretty good at it. I wasn't the best, but I was pretty good. And but also I knew that there was, a great opportunity for leadership. And I began to prepare myself to be able to advance into that arena, knowing that it was going to take some time. But again, having that MBA and beginning to learn and understand about management and leadership, and really taking the time to dig in was really important. And so since then, I've always had mentors who don't look like me. I've had Caucasian males, I've had Asian females, I've had Latinas, I've had African Americans, because there's a huge amount of information that you can glean from different experiences, different backgrounds, and different paths. And they're not in IT. One was HR VP, another one was a CEO, and another one was in finance. So never really focusing on someone that was just like me or doing the same thing or that was on my path, but being able to learn from their differences and incorporate that into my path that make me be the best that I could be.
Wow.
Definitely. And I can attest to that. You always will have somebody in your life that kind of pushes you and guides you along the way. And that may be a different person at different points in your life. I'd say the first mentor that I kind of had when I first began the journey of getting into research was a professor by the name of Dr. Nina Bradley. She just kind of helped me with work ethic and also just balancing a lot of things at once. I think and I utilize that to this day. And the NBA schedule is very hectic, a lot of ups and downs that come along with winning, and then also just having to travel a lot. But I think she instilled in me just finding time to create space for everything that you have going on. And that was something big that helped me, because even when I was in college, I had so many things that I was trying to become involved in. It was just master what you have in front of you. You're not biting off too much at this age, but as you get older, you're kind of doing a lot early on to do less later, or just be able to also just manage it. It seems like less to you, even when it is a lot. And then my second mentor was a cardiologist who I worked with while I was a graduate student, by the name of Dr. Leslie Saxon. She more so just kind of pushed me to just bet on myself and step out there and meet and talk to people who I deemed as higher up or untouchable to a degree. She said, you have the ability, you have the knowledge, you have the background, go out there and go get what you want. So I definitely would say you might not even notice it in your life, but there's always somebody around you that's kind of rooting for you, and they may do it in different forms or fashions, but definitely keep an eye out for those positive people in your life. There's more of them than you even know.
I love that. Really. Yeah, role models, professors, definitely things that I don't know, was really pushed on us as students, especially in the beginning. Reach out and find a mentor. So I'm glad it worked out for you guys, really. So we talked about your work, what you guys like to do, what your work involves a little bit. How do you stay currently motivated in working in your careers or going after bigger goals? How do you stay motivated throughout all of that?
I think the biggest motivation for me in the field that I work in is that there's an attainable goal that multiple different people are trying to reach, and that's just a championship. So I think the same level that, of accountability that the players hold themselves to remain prepared for a game whenever their name is called upon to ultimately try to win a championship. As people that work auxiliary to them, you're also trying to push yourself to that championship standard. And then in terms of staying motivated, I'm just like, I'm a constant thinker. So like I'm always having ideas come across my mind related to the work that I'm doing, but unrelated to the environment that I'm in right now. So I may, similar to what I was talking about with the application of what you're learning, I've learned more than I actually implement at some points in time in my career. And so just taking those things that I've learned and trying to create or think about some futuristic idea that may come out of what I'm doing. I think that's what always keeps me motivated. Like the what's next, what could come of this? Why is it important? People are constantly, asking, why are these numbers important? Why should I listen to them? Are they actionable? And while you may not deem them as valuable in the moment, me personally and groups of other people have thought about value propositions for them that just haven't been seen yet. So just the unknown is my motivation.
And for me, this is going to sound weird, especially with the technology background. For me, it's people. I come across so many different people in my day-to-day job and in working in the global arena that I currently work. And there's always a challenge. There's always something that needs to be solved. And what I've learned is that many people close up or close down as soon as a problem arises. That's where I shine. And when a problem arises, it's really about, okay, this is bigger than me and it's not about me. So let's see what we need to do to resolve this issue. And then working through those issues and working through those challenges, I find that there's a reward at the end, just like when I shared about the 3:46 in the morning run through the house, that probably set the stage. So I have many of those. When we go through it and we get something, it's like, oh, wow, we got it. All right, I knew we'd do it. Great. And then we go on to the next thing. And so, really about, and then I think the people perspective comes into play because I like helping people be all they can be. And a lot of times they don't really, I can see that they have the answer and I can help them get the answer. We just got to peel back some layers to get to it. And then once we do that, they're like, oh, you know what? All we got to do is such and such, such that. What if we did? And then before you know it, they're excited. And then they have a plethora of ideas that they're actually working through now to help them really attain their goal and solve the issue themselves. People are just fascinating. I love learning different languages. Well, I know how to say hi in a bunch of different languages, but don't ask me anything else. Because I think it's so important that to always, understand who you're working with, learn something about them. And because the more you learn about their story, the more it goes beyond just a work assignment. It goes beyond than just being at work, because now we're people trying to solve issues and to help advance the company together. So people, people, people.
Yeah, I think pushing people to kind of find aha moments is another cool thing too. Like there's always insights hidden within data, and when you find them or you find that code that makes the computer work again, that's always like just a grandiose moment that you want to share with other people. Exactly. But more so like pushing them to figure out on their own, like having the intrinsic motivation to want to do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You guys have a lot of knowledge about this whole, of course, it takes a lot of years in the making, being only like so young. I can't even imagine just having all those skills under my belt like you guys do. But with that said, if you were to like take a time machine and go back in time and see your younger self, what is something that, you wish you had known or you wish someone had like told you to like prepare yourself for like the life that you live now? I know we touched on things like managing time and connecting with people of different cultures. Is there anything else?
So for me, the only thing that I think would have been better is I didn't go to college until I was 40. I know I only look 25, but that's okay. But I didn't go to school. I didn't start college until after I was out of the military. I think, and then I really wasn't ready. So I kind of mixed that with, I don't think there's anything that I would want to change because the journey has been so rewarding. And like I mentioned earlier about your season and understanding your timing, that I think the right people were in my life at the right time to help guide me and to give me sound advice to keep me from going over the edge. I've always been a patient person. Let me take that back. Let me back that up. I've always been a person who's always had to deal with learning patience. And so understanding that and then realizing once I went from graduated from school in computers to actually doing the job day to day, I learned that I had a little knowledge, but to go in and to do some of what my teammates were doing, who had been in the industry for a while, is so humbling. I didn't have an opportunity to get puffed up because I was so busy learning, trying to just even get close to what they were able to achieve, some of the code and things that they were able to write, because there were so many challenges, so many ways of doing things. I think it's the one thing that I would say to my younger self is always continue to learn, because as soon as you think you got it, you just ended your career, especially in a technology. It changes so rapidly. Like, the role of a CIO, 10 years ago, I wanted to be a CIO. Today, no, what's a CIO do today, right? And so when we think about how the fields and the careers morph into higher levels, and they migrate into other forms of the industry, and they begin to merge in and to bridge and cohabitate with other disciplines, you find that there's so many opportunities that we have to take the time to just always look at the landscape, always think about where you are and where you want to go, but be patient. That's probably the greatest thing, and this is probably not the place to put it, but that's one of the things that I find in mentoring the college graduates of today. Just because you have a degree don't mean you can do what I do. You probably do some things better than I. I'm not gonna kid you, but I've been around the block a couple of times, and I've dealt with some things that that woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and didn't let me go back to sleep. So there's a lot of things in that arena. So I think for me, it's get an education sooner. But then I question, was that really for me? Because it has been so profitable for me later on in life, because now I was more mature and able to deal with those challenges at a better rate. But I think there's just a lot to that to be said.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. I think for me, just run your own race. Things will happen at the time that they're supposed to happen for you. And I think kind of what you were trying to say, Breanna, is like you're patient in recognizing that you know that you're putting in the work to get where you want to go, but you're still working nonetheless. Like you're still doing something in the background that is pushing yourself forward, so that when you get that perfect moment, that perfect opportunity, you're prepared for it, and so you can trust in your work.
Yeah. Let's see. There's a lot to think about. I mean, I think I think I might go off script with some of these questions. I just want to know because I'm curious. What is your, because you said so much about like your job, what you do, how you even got there. I'm curious, like, what does a day, like the average day in the life of Breanna, an average day in the life of Jay look like?
I guess average day for me is, and I don't know why I like to kind of think in terms of weeks because there's so many different types of days for myself, but I generally try to wake up between like 7 or 8 o'clock. Um, and I start working pretty soon after waking up just because generally we'll have had a game or some type of event go on that data has to be processed and sent out. The insights from that information has to be sent out in preparation for a potential meeting or just decisions that need to be made on training for some of our athletes in the current day. So I'm working like pretty much as soon as I wake up. But after that, I start getting ready, have breakfast, make my way into the facility. At that point, these things that have been processed and put out onto our stream begin to be discussed. We generally have shoot around and or workouts and lifting that goes on in the morning time. And then that'll last until about like noon, 1 o'clock ish, at which point there's kind of like a gap in the day generally. That gap is actually very important time for someone working in professional sports, that gap in time in the day that you have to kind of be to yourself, catch up on your own work or whatever it may be. And I've definitely in more recent years begun to utilize that time to better myself personally. Not staying on a computer like I would in the past, like all the time. Like it's nice to step away from something and be able to come back to it, especially if you are on so often. So just taking that time to, drive, take care of errands that I need to for my own personal life. After that, I generally am headed to a game or I have the evening to myself.
And for me, I wish I had the luxury of 7 o'clock in the morning. My day generally starts at 5. I wake up and there's usually the order of the day going through my mind. So I'll get up, do my meditation, and get myself ready. And then, after I get my coffee and fix breakfast for my mom, then it's really about starting the jumping into meetings, and so much of my day now is filled with meetings, talking about various scenarios, strategies, plans, and programs that we have to, work through and make sure that we're properly preparing ourselves for. And that's probably while there is a lot of benefit to joining them in the meetings, what we find a lot of times is that there's so many challenges within that we have to, really dig through and work through a lot of these challenges. And so helping my team and other teams, identify, problem solve, and then, plan for resolutions within the things that happen day to day. And then, of course, there's always a perpetual fire drill that happens first thing in the morning, and it just wrecks your whole day. And by 3 o'clock, once you have it down, you're sitting back and you're like, I don't know what to do now, because
you just want the time to yourself. Yeah,
exactly right.
My time back.
Yeah, because you've exerted so much energy to work through the issues and trying to communicate and understand, all the intricacies of that particular situation. And then, you're trying to manage attitudes and trying to keep everybody else from jumping over the cliff. So a lot of things like that. But really, it's a lot about, data and understanding the analytics, understanding the insights of the data, because our company, I didn't say this earlier, we do digital media. And we do other forms of media as well. but that's kind of our expertise. So we do a lot of data modeling and a lot of statistics and things of that nature. So working through that and trying to understand, what those models are teaching and what it is showing us, and to be able to make business decisions for our clients and help to lead them to help improve their bottom line.
I think to kind of piggyback on what Breanna was saying and go back one question, another thing that I'd probably tell my younger self is be adaptable. Know when to be adaptable, because like she said, fire drills pop up at all points in your life, and some unrelated to work, some related to work, but you have to know how to approach those situations, whether they be new or something you've seen before. And then if you need to, knowing that like once that fire drill is completed, that you can take time to yourself. You deserve that. If it's something that's more challenging than you were expecting, or if it's something that is business as usual, don't let it rock you off the path that you were taking that day. You just keep going and just know, like, I may not get to this one other thing on my to-do list today, but that's okay. The world won't end.
Right.
Yeah, definitely feel that.
Very often school can give us a lot of structure that's just not a reality in the world after school.
Right. And and that's like I said earlier, because school helps you to get in the mode of thinking along this discipline.
Yes.
But what it doesn't teach you is really how to solve a lot of those issues that come up, and how do you manage those. That's where it really comes in, experience and the willingness to push through. In this industry, in the STEM all around, the challenges are great because the problems are big, and you're trying to move a boulder, you're trying to put up a structure that can support X amount of pounds per square inch and not have it collapse. You're trying to move 15 terabytes of data into a 2 terabyte drive, and and these are things that you have to do, and they're very challenging, and they look sometimes impossible, but it's very doable. And it's just being able to maintain a sense of mental alertness and positive attitude, so that you can help solve these issues and work through them, because there is a solution.
Definitely. And that's where the patience comes into play again.
Yes.
Yeah. That's where the patience comes into play.
Yeah. So I think I might go off script again and just ask. I think I have two questions just out of curiosity for the both of you individually. The first one, I'll ask Breanna about, your career, something more specific. I know you mentioned like C++, like when it comes to computer science, I mean, definitely considering now there's like so many different languages and there's so many different applications in the field. It's just so broad. How could I word this? What coding languages do you know, or are you continuously learning any languages or any new skills? Like, is there a current trend or change in the industry that you always have to like keep yourself on top of?
Yes. So great question. I started out as an application developer. I hated it. I'm not a creative person, right? So I don't like to go in and pick the colors, pick the form, pick the shapes. I like to go in to make sure everybody's adhering to the colors, following the lines, and staying within what they need to do. That's me. I probably, when it comes to one of the favorite languages, I enjoy C++, but I enjoy database administration, right? In database administration, a lot of SQL coding. And so, using sequential query language, it was a different beast of its own. And we would have to bring in, like I mentioned earlier, large volumes of data, make sure that the processors weren't being lagging, making sure that the memory was being properly utilized, making sure that the jobs were running within the minimum amount of time possible. And so there's a lot of things that you did that I implemented from the application development side, to where when we would go through that, we would look at the doing things in modules. So taking a modular approach to it, databases and just handling large volumes of data was something that I just enjoyed doing. It was one of those things that, I didn't get the glory of being the application developer, but in the background, I would tell the application developer, you write that query again and bring my database down, I'm going to lock you out. So yeah, that little sense of control was fun. But I enjoyed databases. That's why I became very knowledgeable in SQL Server X, for many of the additions. And also I was very proficient at Oracle as well. Not so proficient at DB2, but these were tools that needed to be used to help manage data from the country across many different disciplines and departments. So that's what I navigated to. And I think, what you'll do is you'll find within your schooling, you'll find something, you'll touch something that really lights you up. And you'll find yourself going back to that. Follow that, because that's probably where you belong, because you have a niche for it. You have a knack to dig into that particular area. And so that's what you really enjoy to do. And so when the long hours come, it's not so long because you're enjoying what you're doing. Whereas if I were doing something on the application development arena, yeah, I could do it, but I'm not going to have the same energy and I'm not going to have the same drive versus being in, dealing with data and data issues now, really working through that. So that's where I kind of found my path. And when I found it, I didn't give it any grade. I just said, this is my path and this is what I'm going to achieve. And I embraced it and I followed it. So, and I think so many people that I've talked to have had similar experiences.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I mean, that sounds really complex, but I'm actually very impressed by, that's a lot of knowledge, I imagine, a lot of work, and problem solving it's not easy for me, at least. So, that's definitely inspiring, because I don't think I could do it. I'm sorry.
Just give yourself time.
Yep.
You get there.
Wow. So I have one question for Jay, specifically about your background. I know you said you got noticed by the NBA. I'd sort of want to go into that. Like, what was that like? How did that happen?
So the group that I was working with at the time, the group at the USC's hospital, had some connections to athletics, not only within the university, but also a few trainers who I guess would come to the hospital, and their parents worked there or were patients there, and they had connections to professional athletes who were training with them. So there was just always like the atmosphere was kind of appropriate, that they would be in the hospital like setting, because generally, an athlete gets injured or has some scare about an issue they may have with their heart, or has a pre-existing condition that they're having to manage. Athletes spend actually a lot of time around hospitals and within PT clinics, things of that nature. So just the setting was right, and fortunately, because I had also participated in sports all my life, run track at SC, the lady that I was working for, Dr. Saxon, actually gave me the opportunity to seek out research projects related to sports and using digital health tools in that space, trying to think about different studies that we could do to kind of promote the what was going on at the USC Center for Body Computing. And And so some of those happen to involve professional athletes and or training facilities where professional athletes were working, and just, talking to and coming across the right people. We had a couple of things that got published in like Fast Company. Um, we had an article written about us in Vogue at one point, and, just being around the right people. And they, took interest to, wow, how are you utilizing data and these different technologies that you're collecting the data off of in in this space? We want to know more about it. How can this benefit players? How can this improve the way that we're making decisions about their training, about their rest, about their scheduling? And the stars happen to align. Everything involves a little bit of luck, but obviously also just the preparation and desire to be in that space. I think you sometimes come up with things that somebody might not even realize is applicable to the space that they're working in or playing in. And if you can sell them on it and it's reason for it, and get some good longitudinal data to collect, to prove out the point that you're trying to make, it may unearth one insight, but that may mean the world to this team. And they may think, okay, well, let's do some more. Let's find one more insight off of 2 more years worth of research. But also, you got to also be able to take that. And I know I'm kind of getting long-winded and going off the path of the question that you asked, but you also have to be able to take the information that's publicly available and be able to strategize around it, using things such as R, to visualize things that may not be as visible to the naked eye when you're just looking at a number or looking at a schedule. And just Excel, I think Excel and R are the 2 things that I'm pretty proficient in, and they get the job done for me, because most of the stuff that you're presenting, you obviously want to have the technical backing to it, but as long as it can just pass the conversation test, that's usually what pushes things into people's thoughts and makes them want to say, okay, let's act on that. We know this guy does good work. We trust in his knowledge of the sport, and as well as his knowledge of the information that's available, the numbers that he's collecting. So let's act on it. We trust him. And I think that's another thing that pushes athletes as well to respond to you and listen more to what you have to say when something may seem taboo, is that the trust that you build with them, the relationships that you build with them. And so that they don't become a number to you. It becomes a just typical conversation about the schedule. And because of some data that you have that allows you to unearth some insight, you're able to give them an insight on, hey, in the next 2 weeks, XYZ will happen. That's 3 times harder than any other period in the schedule. We may want to make some adjustments, not only to your training schedule during that time period, but you also may want to consider this in your personal life as well. So.
Yeah, sounds like communication and just relationship building is like a huge important aspect of like maintaining that environment between the players and you, and just exchanging that information.
Definitely.
Sounds really interesting.
Yeah, you got to be able to conversate on it. A lot of people aren't willing to get into the nitty-gritty of looking at numbers. They just want the one tidbit of information that all those numbers produce, and how to change it if it's bad, and how to maintain it if it's good. They need the answers.
Like in layman's terms.
Layman's terms, exactly.
Wow. I will ask one more question and then we can go into the Q&A portion. The last question is more on, like racial, cultural environments. I know that, I don't know how long you've been in these careers. I'm assuming that it's been quite a while. You've been here for quite some years in these careers and in these industries. I just want to know, like, as a person of color, as from when you first started to now, what's your impression? Has it changed? Were there any I know you guys have worked with very diverse people at times. Like, I just want to know, what's your impression about race in STEM and in your current industry? Like, what are your impressions? What are your thoughts, especially now that we're having like a more broader, more open conversation about race and equity within like STEM, especially since STEM is very, from research standpoint, it's not the most diverse. I just want to know, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think the first thing is that because we all had a job to do, when I came into it, it wasn't as, I think, there were some biases and things that you had to deal with, right? But all in all, because of the workload, there was a lot of camaraderie and support to get the job done. While generally I was usually the only Black person in the room, I was the only one that was given a task. And no matter where I went, that's pretty much, it was just me. And, but what I did was I always made sure that I found the right managers. I always made sure that it was somebody that I worked for, somebody that I could trust. Because the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to bring in the race scenarios when it's about just common everyday biases. People not understanding why you like to go get your coffee before you do the first thing on the computer, right? Understanding, what are some of these things that what are these intricacies that you have, about your birthdays and things like that, right? So it's really important to understand and have somebody to work that you work for that you can trust. Because when you have that, you can rule out many of the other issues that you have to deal with. And don't make it about race, don't make it about color, but make it about the technology and make it about us collectively. Because like I said earlier, the more I learn about you, the more you're going to learn about me, because it's just the nature of the beast. And I think that as we build that and work that into our workplace, that we become more curious. Dr. Bloom said, that curiosity was something that we could all use, because as long as we remain curious, we remain focused on a goal versus focus on our differences, right? And that's where we run into issues. When differences and issues happen, you deal with it, nip it in the bud. And sometimes it took me being the bigger person. Sometimes it took me talking to someone to help coach us through it. But never let it just fester or blow up into something that becomes out of control. But I found that within my career that while there were biases and things that I had to deal with, because I was focused on progress, I was focused on solutions, I was focused on winning, I was focused on people, I found that it was less impactful in a negative way. And I was always positioned to have a positive impact from our differences.
Definitely. I think that from my perspective, I guess I always viewed my ability to do what I wanted to in this space as possible. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I grew up in Atlanta. I'm gonna put that plain and simple. Is like most of my life, I saw African-American people able to do everything. And so there was never a doubt that, I could do science, or I could be an architect if I wanted to, or a lawyer or an engineer, like whatever it was, I saw it. I think at an early age, I was introduced to different perspectives on life from people that didn't look like myself. And I'm very thankful to my parents for that, because I think that's gotten me a long way in just understanding how different individuals think and just different perspectives of the world. I think that will sometimes allow you to keep race out of certain conversations, because you're just understanding personal perspective based on sometimes just geography. But then every now and then, you will have to deal with it. Someone thinking like, well, do you know this? Do you actually know what you're talking about? And it's just because they haven't seen it. They're not used to it. And so I kind of put that on myself to show them, yeah, I do know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to be the one example of, what you don't think is realistic in this space. And you'll probably end up finding more because of that. And I think I also kind of have a duty in this space to pull others up that look just like me. I think, the NBA is not short of having diversity and having African-American men in a number of different types of roles in addition to playing the game. So using that as a platform to pull others up and show them that there are other avenues, even within something that is so admirable and sexy to the world, to play the sport, but you can also do things around it that don't even involve dribbling the basketball, and you can be Black or any other race.
Wow. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned your parents and how you have that duty. I mean, it seems like you're a really good example. I have a question from the audience, a senior in elementary education. They want to know if either of you have any advice for promoting those interests and those instilling those, that self-confidence and those examples for them, that like representation matters. Do you have any advice in promoting that interest in STEM for children that are minorities?
Attach it to something that is digestible to them. Like, I think for me, it does become relatively easy because I'm able to show it within the context of basketball. But there's other little things, like you could be watching TV and see something that you don't even realize has to do with a STEM related position, and just pointing out to them like, hey, you're watching this on TV. The way that occurred, or the way that got built, is by doing this. So sparking their interest using something that's digestible, something that's relatable to them, that they can kind of connect to and say, oh, okay, that was created through an algorithm, or that was created through knowing how these two different things work together, or the reaction that you get when you combine them.
Yeah, and I would say make it relevant, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really important that now we can see that it doesn't matter what color you are, or what race or what your ethnic background is. Opportunities are there for you, and I think understanding that from the Black perspective, I think it's important that we understand it's okay to use your mind. And it's fun to use your mind. I think we need to energize and work on it. So often we're great at dancing, we're great at sports, we're great at these things, right? But we're also great at our mind. And that's those things that we need to capitalize on. We need to show them, how George Washington Carver discovered all the purposes with a peanut with broken equipment because they wouldn't give him new equipment. Right? Look and see how we have developed and used our mind to build things and to create things. So I think understanding that and just giving them examples and just making it relevant to them, and positive influence, positive, don't let them leave with a negative connotation. Don't let them say anything negative. Don't let them give up on themselves, but speak life into them, speak positive, speak affirmation into them, so that they're able to go in and feel like they can conquer the world, because they can. And I think it's really, as they understand that more and more, they will find that, they're willing to take on these challenges. Using the mind is a lot of work, right? But it's so rewarding, and it's so, just to solve these issues and challenges of life. And so I think it's just really about making it relevant, and just the positive reinforcement to continue on, even when it looks the darkest.
Yeah, that's really.
Sorry, I got on my soapbox. I'm sorry.
Good, yeah.
No, that's really insightful, honestly. So I don't think we have any more questions from the audience. Is there anything else you'd like to add, like to say before we close?
I guess my closing comment would be to anyone who's watching this and is interested in STEM. My thing would be, and my word of encouragement would be to go for it, give it your best, don't quit, because if I can do it, you can do it. If Jay can do it, you can do it. If Jasmin can do it, you can do it. And we just have to be willing to go in and put our mind to work and don't give up, because you'll be amazed at what you may be able to uncover and solve the world's problems.
Mic drop. I don't even want to follow it up. I love that. I think that was great. Be the example that you want for yourself.
That pretty much wraps it up. Well, that is all. Jay, Breanna, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule, out of your day to talk with us tonight. Those are really a lot of insightful and thought-provoking ideas, and just your stories are just so energetic. I mean, I feel like studying right now. That's really inspiring. No words, truly. So thank you for sharing all of
Thank you,
that.
Jasmin. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So anyone in the audience, if you, once you leave this discussion, a window is actually going to pop up with a survey. Please complete the surveys just to provide feedback on tonight's program, just to help us shape future programming. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.
Have a great night. Have a great evening.
All right.